When the dust cleared and the championship was back around her waist, Adeline took the microphone and held it aloft as the chants of NFC and Hell Champ rained down. She waited for a moment before someone threw her cloak to her, and she spun around as she clasped it once again. Well, that was exhilarating. I'm sure our remaining contestants have just as much zeal as he did. Oh, but too many of you survived. She frowns and cocks her head to the side as she looks at the shivering combatants in the dugout. Well, I guess we'll just have an extra match, and the fighter with the least amount of damage can come up first. She points a finger at Kwong and curls it. The man sighs and walks towards her. She directs him to the opposite side of the pit where he starts stretching. The quarterfinals will follow some very simple rules. No timeouts, no rules, and only tap-outs. Knockouts or death. Stop the fight. You have 3 hours between rounds to recover if you survive. Any of you showing exceptional promise may get a unique opportunity. Your path just might diverge. Her eyes linger over one of the fighters, but I can't see who from my vantage point. The rest of you will learn of your placements in the quarterfinal bracket after this bout. With that, she climbs back up to her perch and signals to someone to dim the lights once more. The elevator whirs as the crowd murmurs with excitement. NFC quarterfinal match, Wang Zhao versus Gasha Dukuro. Ladies and gentlemen, fighting for the pursuit of knowledge and all things peaceful, Wang Zhao. A smattering of applause as Wang adopts a neutral stance, eyes locked on the great service elevator as it comes to a halt. A thick fog rolls in, seeping out of the elevator shaft like an open wound. His opponent from the bowels of the NFC and searching for a way to cure his endless hunger. Gasho Dukuro. A pair of yellow eyes. Lights burned from the huge empty sockets in the darkness. An arm that seemed too big to fit into the elevator begins stretching out and weaving through the fog. My vision obscured as it searched for its target. I'd barely had time to press record before I heard a blood-curdling scream ring out from the pit. The sound of someone being dragged as their nails split under the pressure, a low growl echoing throughout the silenced fight arena before a sickening crunch and gurgle before the figure slumped back in the shadows, and the fog dissipated. Where Wang had stood was empty, instead a trail of blood ending in a small pool of blood and flesh. This was whatever was left of Wang. I stared incredulously for a moment. This was hardly a fight. It was a slaughter. This is what happens when Alduin doesn't get her way, Neil sighed, pushing the book over to me to show what monstrosity had taken him. A gargantuan skeleton depicted as over 100 feet tall. Threatening townsfolk leered back at me. I have no clue how it even manifested in the fighter's pit, but I was grateful to be far the fuck away from it. Wang was never meant to survive, or rather there was never meant to be extras. When that happens, she lets her pet out. She sighed and shook her head. Whatever, this is how she's always been. Let's just get on with it. I look to protest, but she shuts me down. Can't help the dead, Sal. Focus on the living and their chance at escaping this place. She was right. I took a breath while the cleanup crew attended and waited for Alduin to speak. She was already in hysterics as she waved goodbye comically to the pile of flesh and bones that was once Kwong. Oh man, I've seen some shutouts in my days, but that That was embarrassing. Still, not all men and women are created equal. I guess he wasn't prepared for everything in his mindfulness teachings, huh? She laughed, and the crowd jeered with her. Well, with that, we have our quarterfinalists secured, and the next fight will now commence. As a screen descended from the rafters and the display began cycling through the faces of the competitors in quick successions before stopping on Rex, he leapt up from his area in the dugout with enthusiasm and started rotating his shoulder to warm it up as he took his place. Well, now, this should be far more competitive. Practitioner of the Death Clutch and one of our 2 invitational members, Rex Ultraviolent Chug. He pumped his fist in the air and laughed as he waited for the hellish creature to emerge from the other side. This time, it ascended without fanfare and opened to show a body wrapped in white plastic and sheets, keeping the head exposed and skin red and blackened beyond recognition. The eyes deadened and the whites gave way to small black pupils with a gray iris as yellow, broken teeth bared in a grin. The smell of rot was unbearable. And his opponent from the vengeful realms of the afterlife, the Pokong! It floated across the pit with no effort and emitted a raspy groan as it grew closer to Rex, who showed absolutely no fear during the stare-down. Alduin's smile grew. Begin! NFC quarterfinal match, Rex Ultraviolent Chug versus the Pokong. Well, fight fans, we come to you with a second quarterfinal match, but technically our first official one, pitting Ultraviolent himself, Rex Chug against the Pokong. Neil, what can you tell us about this creature? Oh, you mean Rex? He's a Death Clutch practitioner, which means he shouldn't be facing something like a Pokong in this matchup. It's cruel, she replied, scanning the book for information. A Pokong is an Indonesian spirit trapped in the death shroud. They are frightening, sure, but nowhere near the level I foresee another quick match, unless... She peers down and stares at the creature, no longer speaking. Well, our cryptid analyst has made her prediction. Let's see if you can score one for the Team Humanity with Rex. The Pokong floated in place and simply stared Rex down, never breaking his grin as Rex began circling for an opening, bouncing on its feet. Alright, you big piece of shit. Let me show you why I was invited to this tourney, he bellowed before rushing in and gripping the Pokong by the waist. It wasn't for my good looks. He deadlifts the creature back and onto its head, with sickening thud before rolling through, holding the head up, and rearing his dominant arm back. It wasn't because of my titles. His fist meets the Pokong's face with extreme prejudice. Rotted teeth and dead flesh caked his knuckles and the surrounding canvas, as the small circles around the venue, threatening to make me vomit. But Rex was not done. He stands up over the creature and squats down, his thighs bulging with power as he leaps into the air, extending his feet for full impact as they both crash down on the creature's head. It's because I am the best fucking fighter in the world and I belong here, he cries, looking around at the crowd and the dugout of fighters before pointing to them. All of you motherfuckers are on notice. I am ultra-violence, and if you think you're gonna get your wish, you've got another thing coming. I will stomp you in the fucking mat. He raises his foot and crashes it down on the Pokong. And as he says this before picking it up once more and tossing it across the venue, ripping part of the shroud as he does so. Wow, I'd say I'm speechless, but this is my job. Mr. Ultraviolence himself just succeeded his own moniker and took out the bakong in no time flat. Could this be the guy to win it all? It certainly seems so, and he's not even shown us his true techniques. I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good to see one of our own score a victory, but my excitement was misplaced. No, he fucked up. That's no normal bakong. It's a bakong Mariah. She tapped on the two types. In a regular quality terrifying bakong, and white with a black face, and its red counterpart next to it, eyes alight with rage, and he's about to pay the price for ripping the ties on it. Within seconds, the bakong screeched and pulled, spindly limbs free of its bindings, crawling on all four towards Rex, with a terrifying swiftness, head bobbing, as if the spine wasn't properly attached, catching him off balance. It kicked him hard in the knee and sent him tumbling to the ground. Mounting him and delivering vicious blow by blow, long nails struck at tender flesh. Fingers of the bakong flew off as it hit with such force, but never relented. When the hand was too rotted, it leaned down and it bit into the shoulder of Rex. A stunning turning of events, the docile bakong turning out to be the red variant and full of zest and rage. Ultraviolence looks to be in trouble here. He only has seconds at most to get out. What will he do? Rex started laughing, even as this thing tore a small piece of flesh away and gnawed at the soft parts underneath. Well, I'm still not intent on playing my hands before the later round, but I guess even I won't walk away with at least a few scrapes and some proper efforts. He stood up, this creature refusing to let go even as he rose to full height. You deserve to see why I was invited here at least. Using a slow, methodical approach, he pried the head and jaws off the prongs away from his shoulder, mechanically pushing its body off of him, with just pure strength. When he was firmly detached, he excised force to its chest to create some distance between the two. Undeterred, the bakong screeched and ran forward, grotesque and bloody teeth bared. In that moment, Rex took a step forward and punched the air. When his hand had collapsed, the skull, jaw, and chest of the prong immediately took impact, despite the distance. First, his jaw would be eviscerated. The bottom half went flying, and the black, rotting tongue flopped out. Before it could react, the skull crushed inwards, and the horrific dent forced brain matter out of the nose and ears like a slush. Last but not least, the chest cavity caved in and burst, a clean hole through, with you could see Rex's fist. The bakong fell and Rex simply smiled, ripping a piece of his shirt off to bandage up the shoulder. Ain't nobody who touches me lives if I don't want them to. That is the death clutch. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Alduin showered praise on the fighter as he walked back to the dugout, pumping his fist. I couldn't help but join her praise of him. Would you look at that? At that, we actually have some damn good human fighters. Rex Chug, proving why he was invited here in the first place. Bravo! Mr. Ultraviolence moves to the semifinals. The screen flashes up again, and this time stops on the eerie, smiling face of Eustace de Colada. As he makes his way over to the starting point, I'm filled with indescribable sense of dread. Something is off about this guy. The elevator whirs to life, and we are once again greeted by the puppet master and Mr. Stairs as they bow and take the center stage. Our other invitational contestant drew next. Talk about lucky. He is the nightmare catcher and grand illusionist. Eustace de Colada. He bows deeply and begins fitting with his satchel. Before Alduin can introduce them, Mr. Stairs has torn free of the sheet and is running towards Eustace, rage in his eyes. NFC quarterfinal match, Eustace de Colada versus the Puppet Master with Mr. Stairs. We're back for the next match, and this one should be something truly disturbing if Mr. Stairs' previous match is anything to go by. But I'm curious as to why he's rushing ahead so quickly now. She doesn't immediately reply. Her book is still closed, and she's gripping the handles on her blade. I tap her lightly on the shoulder, and she regains her senses, blinking for a moment before replying, He captures nightmares. They fight for him and do his bidding. He's taking many monstrosities out of the world and put a collar around their neck like animals. Some call him a hero, others call him a villain. She doesn't break her stare at all, biting her lip anxiously. What do you call him, Nell? I ask as Eustace grins and the satchel opens. She grimaces and grips her blade tighter. I call him the greatest monster of all. The Puppet Master covers his eyes and wails as Mr. Stairs runs full tilt towards Eustace. You took everything from me. You took my family, our way of life, and my reason for being, he hisses. I don't care that we did wrong. What gives you the right to do this to us? Eustace's smile widens and he pulls the satchel open to match, right in front of Mr. Stairs as he darts forward. Because you are unsightly, it is my job to cleanse. There are many in here who will delight in your return and your entertainment. Whatever lurks in the satchel on the occasion, neither myself nor Nell can see it. It sent Mr. Stairs screaming as he veered and turned around to go backwards towards the Puppet Master, but it was too late. The shadows that lurked within the satchel stretched out and wrapped themselves around the spindly legs and pulled on the puppet's head, covering its mouth and ripping him backwards. In an instant he was gone. The puppet man sank forward against the wall, his eyes vacant and drooling. Eustace simply giggled and walked back to the dugout without so much as a boast. We were left in silence, with an unmistakable sense of foreboding lingering in the air. There was something otherworldly about him, something primal and dangerous that I couldn't put my finger on it. Amid all the creatures, demons, and horrors, he stood out as a calming element, and that scared the living daylights out of me.